Today, we'll break down the story of From Season 3, Episode 5. The episode begins with Boyd and Ellis bringing Randall, who was severely injured and lying outside, back into the building. Randall's face is covered in wounds, and he's in extreme pain. Moriel arrives to treat him, but Randall, overwhelmed by the pain, pushes her away. Despite Boyd's attempts to calm him, Randall lashes out, blaming Boyd. "This is all your fault. You left me there to die," he accuses. Boyd, however, manages to defuse the situation. The next morning, Boyd is outside when Kenny, Christy, and Jade return from their trip into the forest to gather food supplies. Christy is hurt, and Moriel quickly steps in to tend to her injuries. Since they were away the night before, they have no idea about the mysterious ambulance that appeared. Boyd informs them that Tabitha has returned. Jade immediately ran after hearing this. Meanwhile, Henry mentions that he wants to change his clothes, so Donna takes him to an upstairs room with a wardrobe. At the same time, Victor is with Sarah. Still unaware that his father has arrived in town, Victor shares that Jasper had ventured into the tunnels, and without enough supplies, they won't be able to follow. Determined, Victor decides to enter the house, where Henry is staying, to gather supplies with Sarah following him. Inside, they encounter Donna, who informs them that Nikki has died. This news frightens Sarah, prompting her to step outside. Victor tries to go to a room to collect his belongings, but Donna stops him. She reveals something shocking. Tabitha has returned and has brought Henry, Victor's father, along with her. Donna urges Victor to meet his father, but fear overwhelms him. Unable to face the situation, Victor fled the house. Sarah confronts Victor, demanding, "What's going on with you?" Victor responds, "My father has arrived here. We'll talk another day. For now, you should leave." The scene then shifts to Tabitha sitting with Julie and Ethan, with Jim also present. They ask her, "How did you feel when you got out of this place?" Tabitha answers, "I was terrified. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital. Honestly, I can't even explain how I ended up there." Jim offers her comfort, trying to ease her distress. At this moment, Jade arrives and immediately questions her. "Boyd told me you went inside a tree and somehow managed to get out of this place. How did you do it? How did you come back? Show me that magical tree so we can escape," he insists. Jim steps in, firmly saying, "Back off a bit. Tabitha isn't going anywhere, she's staying here." But Jade doesn't relent. "Boyd mentioned a bottle hanging on that tree. It has to be important. Take me to that tree so we can figure this out," he presses. Finally, Tabitha takes a deep breath and announces, "A town meeting is scheduled, and I plan to attend." "Meetings never solve anything," Jade remarks. "If we want to escape, we need to take action ourselves." Jim responds, "I'll show you the tree, but not now. You need to leave. Tabitha needs her rest." Meanwhile, Randall begins to recover slowly. Nearby, Boyd and Kenny have a conversation. Kenny questions Boyd. "They killed everyone but spared him. Why?" Boyd replies, "It was a warning. They want us to think we're safe during the day, but Randall's survival reminds us we're not. It's a tactic to instill fear. The night is never safe. But we can't let fear control us, and we can't keep pretending everything is fine. We need to act." Kenny and Boyd decide to check on Randall, but Moriel intercepts them, pleading, "Please don't go near him right now." Moriel advises Boyd and Kenny Randall won't take kindly to being approached. Obeying her request, Boyd and Kenny step outside. Meanwhile, Donna leads Henry to Victor's room. She explains that this is where Victor used to stay. Standing in the room, Henry feels a flicker of comfort and reflects, "This room is a little different from my son's back home. I always held on to the hope that one day my wife Miranda, my son Victor, and his sister Elias would come back to me." He pauses before continuing, his voice heavy with emotion. "But they never did. It was the hardest thing I've ever faced. Something I thought I'd never survive. Over time, I realized they were gone for good, and slowly, I began to forget them. My son must have been here, all alone, without his family. What kind of family abandons their children? Maybe that's why he doesn't want to talk to me now. Donna responds, "Give him some time, he will talk to you." At that moment, Tilly enters the room and informs them everyone's waiting for the meeting. Henry looks at her with concern. "What's the meeting about?" he asks. She responds, "Since Tabitha returned, everyone is curious about how she came back. People have the right to know." As the meeting begins, Boyd attempts to calm the crowd. When Tabitha arrives, Dale wastes no time and asks, "How did you return? If there's a way out, why didn't you leave for good?" Tabitha recounts everything that happened, sharing the full truth. However, the crowd grows restless. They ask, "If you were able to leave, why didn't you contact the authorities?" Tabitha explains that she tried, but people started to believe she was crazy, including Henry. He admits that, at first, he also thought she was insane and didn't believe her, but later, he came to trust her. The others argue, if Henry could trust her, surely the police would have too, and she could have helped them. But she didn't. Now that she's back, Officer Acosta steps in to defend her. No one knows how they ended up in this place. Fatima accuses Acosta, saying, "You shouldn't speak after all, you killed a girl." Boyd defends Acosta, clarifying that it was an accident. However, Dale interrupts, claiming that everything happening here feels like one big mistake. He accuses everyone of finding ways to escape, but not actually leaving, and of preventing others from doing so. The tension intensifies, and the argument grows louder, with the crowd turning on Tabitha. They blame her, forcing her to leave. Boyd attempts to calm things down, but Dale declares he's done and grabs his bag to leave. Julia, who hadn't been part of the meeting, heads to Colony's house and steals some drugs. Elgin finds her there, and they end up doing drugs together. Elgin confides in Julia about having seen a spirit, who asked him for help. Meanwhile, Victor sits alone in the cold, and Sarah joins him, trying to convince him to leave as the freezing temperature sets in. Victor initially ignores Sarah, but she steps in to calm him down, urging him not to overthink. She reassures him that his father will be proud of him if they meet. Victor responds by admitting he hasn't accomplished anything remarkable and confesses he's feeling scared. Sarah comforts him, saying he's not alone in feeling that way. His father might also be scared. He may be thinking that he is not a good father. This thought gives Victor a sense of relief. Meanwhile, Jade is seen near Ethan. He asks Jade why he didn't attend the meeting. Just then, Tabitha and Jim arrive, with Tabitha visibly upset and frustrated that no one believes her. Jade tells her that even if others don't believe her, he does. And he asks her to take him to the tree. Tabitha agrees, but Jim objects. She explains that she won't go inside the tree but will stay at a distance and only show Jade where it is. Reluctantly, Jim agrees. Before leaving, Tabitha reassures Ethan, asking him to stay with his father and promising she'll return soon. We then see Boyd avoiding Ellis, prompting Ellis to confront him and ask why his father is ignoring him. Boyd accuses Ellis of siding with Fatima, who dismissed Tabitha's concerns and fueled the crowd's anger. Ellis defends Fatima, explaining that she's pregnant and upset, which led to her questioning things. Boyd, however, criticizes her behavior and walks away. Meanwhile, Julie and Elgin are in a basement, filled with old items, some dating back to the 1990s. Elgin mentions that he used to come here when he couldn't sleep. The two begin exploring the space, with Julie trying on an old coat and using a vintage rubber band to tie her hair, while Elgin finds a hat to wear. They stumble upon a camera and start taking pictures of each other. Elsewhere, Acosta approaches Boyd to thank him for supporting her during the meeting. However, Boyd responds coldly, saying, "Don't think I've forgiven you." Acosta confronts someone with a harsh accusation, "You did something terrible, you killed a girl." The intensity of the moment makes Acosta uncomfortable, and she decides to leave. Meanwhile, Fatima hides in a secluded place and starts eating spoiled vegetables. Ellis notices her and approaches, concerned, asking, "What are you doing here?" Fatima responds, "You'll never understand what I'm going through." When Ellis presses her to open up, she finally admits, "I think something is wrong with our baby." Ellis reassures her, saying, "Nothing's wrong, our baby is fine." Ethan observes Henry, who is standing silently and staring at a signboard that reads motel. Henry murmurs, "Where is the motel? I still don't see it." Ethan approaches and says, "You're Victor's father. Come with me, I'll show you our animals." Henry agrees and follows him. At the same time, Victor and Sarah appear nearby. When Victor sees Henry, he recognizes his father. The two move toward each other, finally embracing in an emotional moment of reconciliation, leaving their past grievances behind. Meanwhile, Boyd is alone in Randall's bus, lost in thought and missing him deeply. A girl follows Boyd onto the bus, gently consoling him. "Don't blame yourself for what happened to Randall last night," she says. "You did the right thing by trying to save others. Whether someone stands by you or not, I will always be with you." Meanwhile, Tabitha is near a peculiar tree, where Jade arrives shortly after. The tree, adorned with bottles hanging from its branches, draws their attention. As Tabitha begins to take down the bottles, she discovers slips of paper inside, each with numbers written on them. Puzzled, she begins to wonder about their significance. "I don't understand any of this," she mutters, confused. Jade, looking thoughtful, responds, "No, it can't be meaningless. These numbers must mean something, maybe a date or a clue." He sits down nearby and starts drinking. After a moment, Jade reveals, "I went into the tunnel and saw your kids. There was a drawing that matched exactly what I saw there. I also saw some children lying on the rocks. I couldn't make sense of it then, but I believe everything has a purpose. Even the bottles hanging on this tree." At that moment, Dale arrives and notices the tree. He says, "So this is the tree that leads somewhere. Now I know about it. What were you both doing here?" Jade responds, "You shouldn't go inside this tree. It's not safe." But Dale, resolute, counters, "We have to do something to get out of here." With determination, he begins entering the tree, declaring, "I'll find a way, and later, you'll all thank me." Without hesitation, Dale disappears inside the tree. Meanwhile, a loud scream draws a large crowd to another part of the area. The source of the noise is the swimming pool. Boyd arrives at the scene and carefully surveys the chaos to identify the person in distress. To everyone's horror, it's Dale. He's somehow embedded in the swimming pool wall, as if fused into it. He writhes in agony, struggling to free himself. Boyd, realizing there's no other option, draws his gun to end Dale's suffering. But before he can fire, Dale succumbs and dies. The crowd is frozen in fear and shock. Boyd turns to them and says, "I warned all of you before. Don't go inside that tree. I've been there, and there's no way out. Just look at what happened to Dale. If anyone else wants to take their chances outside, feel free to step into that tree. But don't say I didn't warn you." Donna and the others are visibly shaken by his words. Everyone is scared after seeing Dale's condition. With this chilling scene, the episode comes to an end.